Welcome to a new session, and in this session we are going to see how to set up a Amazon Aurora based database instance on the AWS platform. Alright, so we know how to reach to the Amazon RDS dashboard here, and from here let's click on create database. I hope that you have already read through the documentation relating to the Amazon Aurora, which I had given in the earlier topic as a PPT on the LMS. Please do review that before coming to this session. Right, so that's standard create. I'll go with Amazon Aurora here. So I have two options here. Either I can go for the MySQL compatible edition or the PostgreSQL compatible edition. I'll go with the MySQL one. And here we have two options. One is the provision and the serverless. All right. So remember, serverless does not mean that there is no server. There is definitely a server at the background, but however, the pricing is based on the number of hits, the number of queries that's going to be happening on the database. All right. So let's keep it as provisioned here. And as for the replication features, we want single master or multi-master. For the purpose of this demonstration, I'll leave it as single master. All right. And for the MySQL version, we have here the list of versions that's available. So I'll go for 2.10.2. All right. And in the Amazon Aurora, you don't get the free tier version. It's always the production and the dev test only. You don't get the product free tier environment. So if you want to perform this test demonstration, you can do that, because this is going to be costing us. And if you don't want to do that and skip this, it's fine with that. All right. So I'll go with the dev test here. Okay. As usual, I'll call the dev test cluster identifier. I'll call it as database 1. The master username, I'll make it as admin. And the master password, I'll keep it as test1234. Remember, the password can be of your choice. All right. So the password, the confirm password is also done. And I'll go for the burstable classes. I don't want the memory optimized classes here at the moment. So I'll go for a T3 small, medium, large. You see that we don't have the micro here. All right. So we'll just keep the T3 small here. All right. And you want to create a Aurora replica or a reader node in different AZ, you have that option here for multi-AZ deployment. Remember, Amazon Aurora enforces multi-AZ deployment. All right. So they say, okay, by default, they want you to do the multi-AZ deployment. That is where the, that is one of the core strengths of Amazon Aurora. But we will go without the Aurora replica for the moment. All right. And the virtual private cloud, we will keep it as it is in the default one. And we want this to be publicly accessible. So we'll keep it as yes. And we can use an existing security group. Remember, we are going to be using port number 3306. And from the previous ones, we already created the SQL RDS security group, which is open for port number, the 3306. So I'll use that one. All right. All right. So I've selected the SQL RDS SG. If you have deleted this, then go ahead and create a new security group. All right. As for the availability zone, I will leave it as no preference. Password-based authentication is what I want to choose. And let's go into the additional configuration now. As for the database name, definitely yes, we need to give the database name. We'll call it as database 1. The cluster parameter group and the parameter group, I'll leave it as default. I'm not going to be changing them. The failover priority, all right, I'll leave it as it is. Backup, and you see you don't have the option to go and delete or disable the backup. So this is one of the mandatory requirements of Amazon Aurora. So you have to have that backup. So we'll leave it at 1 day at the moment. So we can copy tags to the snapshots, which means that whatever tags we set on this specific RDS is going to be automatically replicated to the snapshots also. All right. And do we want the encryption? No. All right. However, if I'm going to enable encryption, I have your manual method of entering the ARN of the key, or the default one. But for this demonstration, I'm going to be disabling the encryption here. Then enhanced monitoring is one of the options that we have here. So I'm going to be disabling this also. All right, the log exports, I'm going to be leaving it as it is. Maintenance, yes, I'm going to enable auto minor version upgrades. Maintenance window, I'm going to select as no preference. All right, so now let me go ahead and hit on create database, or let's just revise this once. So it's the standard create method. The engine type is Amazon Aurora. I'm going to keep it as MySQL compatible and provisioned. I'm not going to use the serverless. I'm going to use a single master, and I'm going to use the MySQL version 2.10.2. Templates, you don't get the free tier here. We'll go with the dev test only. So we have to have the cluster identifier, the username and the password. Make a note of all this information. The database classes, instance classes, we have the memory optimized and the burstable class. I will go with the burstable class and T3 small. As for the multi-AZ deployment, I will not use the multi-AZ deployment. I will just leave it as it is. I don't want to create an Aurora replica here. And publicly accessible, remember to make sure this is publicly accessible. And I can use the older one. If this is not available with the port 3306 open, you can go ahead and create a new security group, and I'll use the password based authentication. And remember, if the additional configuration is not expanded by default, make sure to expand it, because you still have to give it a initial database name. All right. Backups, yes, you have to go for the backups, so there is no option to completely disable this, so we'll leave it at 1 day here, and all the rest I'll just leave it as it is, and I'll go ahead and hit create database. All right, so there is going to be the reader instance and the cluster instance is going to be showing us here. So I'm not going to be, I'm going to be pausing this video for a while, because it's going to take both of them to get created. So we have the regional cluster and the reader instance, both of them are getting created. It's going to take a while. Let's wait for it to get completed. All right, meanwhile, let me pause this video. All right, now a part of the Aurora instances I've got created. All right, so you see the regional cluster here, and it is showing size as 1 instance and available. All right, so to view the connection details, you can click on here. Make sure to copy all this information. All right, the endpoint information also, you copy it and keep it here. Okay, so now let's go ahead and close this. Remember, to access this, we have 2 endpoints which is given to us. All right, so the first endpoint is here, and it is not the read only here. Okay, so we have to wait for a while before the second instance is also created. Let's try to see if the first instance is working. Only with the first instance, it will say it is not going to be working there. All right, but let us check it out. Let me put in the server address, the admin test 1234, and let me test it. All right, I have to select the database type. We selected the Aurora MySQL, right? Okay, I'll put in the Aurora MySQL here, and let me test it now. It will say error invoking remote method DB connect. All right, why? Because we have to wait for both the instances to be up. So I'll cancel this. So we have to wait for the the database 1 instance 1 to be completely up. That is the writer instance to be up. Remember that. All right. So let me pause the video while the writer instance is coming up. All right, the instance is now available. All right, the writer instance, it took me like about 7 to 8 minutes for the entire process to complete. And yes, so if you look here, I told you about the group resources earlier. So let me see what's happening if I'm going to switch this off. You see the parent-child relationship is gone. If I'm going to enable this, I can see the parent-child relationship here. So that's what is about the group resources. All right, so I have the instance available. Let me try to access it now. Okay, let me add. I'll call this as AWS Aurora MySQL. Database type is going to be MySQL. The host, let me paste the endpoint which I already copied. The username is admin and the password here, and let me try to test it. It still says not found a database cluster 1 here. This is probably because of the reason that the security group is not configured correctly here. Let's go and check this out. So we should see the security group, which is SQL RDS SG. Right. So the inbound rules is 3306. All right. Let me edit this inbound rules. I'll delete this. I'll add a new rule and I'll say this is Aurora, and I'll allow connectivity from everywhere, and I'll save the rules. Alright, the rules are set now. Let me go back to the SQL Electron and test it out now. It is telling me that the get address info, this address is not found. Alright, let me fix that also. Let me go to the regional cluster, and this is the one that we need to use. Let's test out with this one first. Okay, and let me test it now. Still getting the same error. Let me check out with the writer instance now. And with the writer instance, it is working successfully. All right. And let's say if we want to go back and try with this also. All right. Let's edit the inbound rules once again. Let me delete this. Let me add a rule, and I'll say Aurora, and I'll say my IP. All right. Let me save the rules. Okay. And now it's fine. Let me test it out once again. Okay, I'll cancel this. I'll again come from the first to make sure that we are seeing it clearly. That's AWS Aurora MySQL. All right. Database select is MySQL. The host name is the writer instance here. Okay, and the admin and the password is test1234. Test, connection successful, save. All right, let me connect to it now. All right, you see that there is one database, which is database 1, which is already created. We don't have any tables here yet. Okay, so you can go ahead and create tables using the standard MySQL commands. And that's about with the MySQL Aurora, and we can create multiple instances, multiple replicas, and we can break the replicas for use as a data warehousing instance for OLAP, which is for the OLAP transaction, OLAP analytical processing. So there is tons of information, tons of tasks that can be achieved with this Aurora, and Aurora is very powerful when compared to the others because it has inbuilt redundancies built to it, and you can create multiple read replicas. The read replicas can be broken and can be made the write replicas, databases also. So there is many options here with the Amazon Aurora. So do try this out. However, this is going to be charged, and if you want to skip this from practice, you can skip this from practice. Thank you very much for watching this session, and let's meet in another video there.